But one of the things I wanted to just take a look at is the labor provisions themselves. And I know one of the things that you all have been very active in, and I think you've at least in my opinion, have had some success in this free trade agreement, is improving the labor and worker rights provisions for the workers in those countries. In particular, many folks have looked at this and said, this is May 10th plus. You know, it's not just the May 10th agreement, which some of you all may be familiar with, was an agreement reached between the countries, particularly the United States and Colombia, with respect to implementing and protecting workers' rights and particularly for those who were in unions. And the terms that I've seen, and I'm not a labor specialist, but we did have one here last time, Claude Fontaine, and he talked about how this is really May 10th plus, and some people want to keep that quiet because that turns off certain folks who might actually vote for it. But can you give me some idea, you know, how do you, like I say, I feel like it's been an achievement. How do you feel that this is done, and what have you all done to move this all forward in a productive manner?
Thank you, Nicole, for that question. I really appreciate it. As you all know, the labor chapters of trade agreements and the environment chapters to some extent have been a huge focus for the labor movement over the last couple of decades, starting with the North American Free Trade Agreement, where we ended up with a side agreement that was only partially enforceable. And what we've tried to do is, as you say, sort of progressively strengthen and enforce and improve the labor protections in trade agreements, because we do see this as a crucial piece of our trade policy. And so, it's been progress over the years. The TPP labor chapter, I would say, is essentially very similar to May 10th. It's May 10th plus there are a couple of small improvements or changes over the May 10th agreement, but they're really not that significant. So in a lot of ways, the big breakthrough was the May 10th deal, where we do have the ILO, the International Labor Organization, core labor rights that are incorporated into the commitments of the trade agreement and are enforceable through the same dispute settlement mechanisms as are available for the commercial provision. So that is something that we've fought for, we've worked on, and we work very closely with the administration on the labor chapter, but to some extent, we actually felt like the TPP labor chapter could have been and should have been much stronger. And if you will recall, the May 10th deal was negotiated under George W. Bush, under pressure from Democrats, particularly in the House of Representatives. Sandra Levin and Charlie Rangel in particular worked very hard and had a business, labor, Republican, Democrat agreement to move forward with strengthening the labor chapter. And so that was a big breakthrough. We kind of thought that with a Democrat in the White House, we would be able to really build on the May 10th deal and to do something much better and much stronger, because we have experience over the last couple of decades with using the labor chapters in various trade agreements and seeing what some of the weaknesses and the problems and the difficulties have been. We had a lot of good ideas, I think, about how to strengthen the labor chapter, and most of those were not taken on board by the administration. They, were basically sort of, May 10th is good enough, we're going to make a few little small changes around the edges, and so that was disappointing. And the other problem for us is that we have really had a hard time using and enforcing the labor chapters and trade agreements, and so I think our evolution is that we really want to see the labor provisions reach the next level, and that didn't happen in TPP. So in TPP, you have to have the trade-off between the labor provisions that will be put in place that will put some pressure on countries like Malaysia and Vietnam and Brunei and Mexico that have severe labor rights deficiencies and problems both in their law and in their enforcement, and the market access. And in this case, we don't have the confidence that the labor chapter is really going to be adequate, particularly I would say with respect to Vietnam and Mexico, where Vietnam does not currently have any freedom of association, any right for workers to form an independent and democratic union. There is supposed to be a pretty rapid implementation, but we just are not confident that it's going forward, partly because of the trouble we've had even enforcing trade agreements in the last 7 years with the Obama administration. We've had a case against Guatemala, with respect to Guatemala, for 7 years that has not come to fruition, a case in Bahrain, a case in Honduras, and we've been very disappointed. So we are looking for a new generation, and we didn't see it in this agreement.